Welcome to Friends and Fiction. 4 New York Times bestselling authors, endless stories. Novelists Mary Kay Andrews, Kristin Harmel, Kristy Woodson Harvey, and Patti Callahan Henry are 4 longtime friends with more than 70 published books between them. Together, they host Friends and Fiction, with author interviews and fascinating insider talk about publishing and writing, to highlight and support independent bookstores. They discuss the books they've written, the books they're reading now, and the art of storytelling. If you love books and you're curious about the writing world, you're in the right place.
Hi, Friends and Fiction family. This is Kristy Woodson Harvey, one of your co-founders and co-hosts of Friends and Fiction, coming to you tonight with a very special Friends and Fiction presentation. So a couple weeks ago, I had the honor of hosting Nicholas Sparks' book launch in Savannah and getting to interview him, which was super fun, about his new novel, Remain. So if you haven't heard about this supernatural love story yet, it is a collaboration with M. Night Shyamalan, and I talked all about the differences between the novel and the movie and how this really cool collaboration came to be, what you can expect from each. Of course, we had to chit-chat a little bit about the notebook, and I revealed kind of a fun secret connection between myself and one of Nicholas Sparks' movies. So you'll have to check that out. I hope you love this episode as much as I loved recording it, and we hope you enjoy this special presentation.
Wow, packed house. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. On behalf of the Savannah Book Festival, we are so honored to host you tonight for this very special off-season event. I am Cecilia Arango, a member of the SBF Board of Directors and co-chair of the Author Committee. It may not be February, but the Savannah Book Festival is in full swing tonight. And what better way to celebrate than with one of the most beloved storytellers of our time? Tonight marks the launch of Nicholas Sparks' newest novel, Remain, a supernatural love story. A one-of-a-kind collaboration that explores the mysteries of life, death, and human connection. This groundbreaking project was co-created with none other than M. Night Shyamalan, the visionary filmmaker behind The Sixth Sense and Signs. Together, Sparks and Shyamalan have crafted parallel versions of the same story, Nicholas as a novel and Shyamalan as a screenplay. The novel releases today, and the film, starring Jake Gyllenhaal and Phoebe Dynevor of Bridgerton fame, is set to hit theaters in October of 2026. As one of the most haunted cities around, we are delighted to play a small part in the launch of Remain. I have just a few quick housekeeping notes before we begin. Please take a moment to silence your cell phone. Even if you think you've silenced them, please take a moment to whip that sucker out, take a quick look at it, put that baby on silence. We've set aside time for a Q&A session later in the program. After the Q&A, a professional photographer will be available for photos with Nicholas, and final instructions will be shared at the conclusion of this event. If you didn't pick up your pre-signed copy of Remain on your way in, E. Shaver Bookseller will be stationed at the table in the lobby to assist as you exit. Nicholas Sparks is the author of 25 books, all New York Times bestsellers, translated into over 50 languages, with more than 150 million copies sold worldwide. 11 of his novels have been adapted into films, including The Notebook, Dear John, and A Walk to Remember. He is also the founder of the Nicholas Sparks Foundation, which supports global education and cultural understanding. Joining Nicholas tonight, see, what did I tell you? I'm going to say it again. Please take this moment to take out your phones and put them on silent. Thank you. Joining Nicholas tonight is Kristy Woodson Harvey, a dear friend of the festival and a literary powerhouse in her own right. Kristy is the best-selling author of a dozen novels, including Beach House Rules and the Peachtree Bluff series. Kristy first appeared at the festival in 2020 and returned in 2022 with Friends and Fiction. We are thrilled to welcome both of these extraordinary voices to Savannah tonight. So, without further ado, please join me in giving a warm Savannah welcome to Nicholas Sparks and Kristy Woodson Harvey.
Thank you. He's such a gentleman. He let me pick my side. Isn't that nice?
I have daughters. They're like, no, Dad, I have to be on this side. I'm like,
He understands the good side, the bad side. You know, it's important. You can tell that through your writing.
oh, thank you, thank you.
Well, congratulations, first of all, on your 25th novel. I think that in and of itself deserves a round of applause.
I feel like really the applause should go to those who've read all 25. You know who you are. And of course, anyone who's bought any of them. Hey, I do appreciate it. I wouldn't keep doing this without the readers. And y'all mean everything to me.
Well, Remain is a truly extraordinary book, and as you know, millions of people know you for your love stories, which they will find in Remain, but there are some new and different elements in this novel, too. So can you tell all of these lucky readers who have a copy of Remain now what they can expect from this book?
Yeah, okay. How do you do these things without, like,
I know.
spoiling
You know what? I was
book,
actually
right?
going to do it for you. I was going to be like, Remain is a novel about blah, 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 because I hate doing
Well,
it about
it
my-
was already said in the opening, you know, my wonderful introduction. Look, if you've read anything that any of my novels, yeah, there's a love story in there, all right? You wonder, is it romantic? Yeah, it's romantic. Trust me, it's good. You know, it'll if those are elements you like in any of my novels, you'll certainly love that in Remain. Of course, there is the collaboration with Night, and we came together with a different story. Now, it's not so far off of what I've done before in the past.
It's really not.
How I vary my novels so they feel different, right? If everything I've written pretty much is a love story set in North Carolina, how do you make them different, right? So you might think The Notebook was about everlasting love, and Message in a Bottle was about love after loss, and the characters were different, the voices were different, the perspective was different, and the length was different, the structure was different, and so it varied. You come to A Walk to Remember, and that was about first love, and again, the length was different, so I vary all these things. Well, as you begin to move, you're like, oh my gosh, how do I keep changing things up? So what I'll do is I'll combine themes. I'll do, if A Walk to Remember was first love and The Notebook was everlasting love, I might do, for instance, in The Guardian, I did love and danger. Or in A Bend in the Road, love and mystery. And you might say Remain is love and mystery again, but it's very different than A Bend in the Road was.
So I was going to ask you what this book was really about, but I think you answered that, love and mystery.
Yeah, I think that's probably the fairest way to sum that up.
I think that's a really good way to sum it up. Okay, so you have done a collaboration before with your brother, which I'm sure was very different. It was nonfiction and I'm sure a very personal story. But oh my goodness, this collaboration with M. Night Shyamalan is, wow, like that's a very, very exciting thing. So can you tell us how that came about?
Yeah, it was interesting, and it's funny because a lot of people see our two names and they're like, that just doesn't go together. You know, this is just not going to work. What on earth are they doing? But I'm a big fan of Nights. You know, I like horror movies in general. and I'm a big fan of his work. And when I look at Knight's work, when you look at, I don't care which movie you're doing, he's really big into character, right? And well-defined characters. And in each of his films, his characters go on a journey, right? And often it's due to external elements, but there's still a journey in which each character ends up learning something about themselves. They're films with often deep emotion, although it might be fear. There's also sense of loss, right? I mean, if you saw A Knock at the Cabin, that's pretty heartbreaking toward the end of it, and so he has these journeys, and then of course he has endings that typically surprise. And I look at what I do and I say, yeah, I try to do these things too, right? I try to have characters. I try to have an interesting story. I try to make everything that I do as different from previous work as I possibly can. And I try to surprise you at the end. So to both of us, it felt very natural. Now, a couple of funny stories. Years ago, way back when, and it's really better if Knight tells this story, and he did yesterday, but he didn't come here. Sorry. When Knight was a young screenwriter, his first screenplay was a love story. And that's what kind of got him known in Hollywood. So way back in 1999, right, I'd sold The Notebook for film, and they hired a guy named Jan Sardi to adapt it. They did that. He did a first pass, and then they didn't like what he'd done. So they made a decision. We're going to hire a brand new writer to adapt the script from scratch. The first writer they approached was M. Night Shyamalan. Now, he could not do it. Do you know why? Because he was doing a movie called The Sixth Sense. And I loved The Sixth Sense. And so years ago, and I just thought that was so original. So years ago, I began to wonder, could I do something like The Sixth Sense? So I wrote a novel called Safe Haven. And spoiler alert for those of you who haven't read it, it's been out for like 15 years. Okay, it's not my fault here. Look in the mirror. All right, if you're like, he shouldn't have said that. No, it's been there. It's even free in the library, okay? There's a secondary character in Safe Haven. So you have the main female character, and she lives next to her neighbor. And by the end of the novel, you're wondering, was the neighbor a ghost? Was the neighbor never really there? Was she a figment of the main character's imagination? And it was really kind of the ghost of the male character who is a widower. And sorry, if you haven't read Safe Haven, it's still worth the read, by the way. Okay. But I did that as a secret nod to my appreciation for what Knight did in The Sixth Sense. And so then years later, now we come to finally answering her question. And you can't blame me, I'm a storyteller. This is what I do. It started as kind of one of those Hollywood things, right? My people in Hollywood, my agent knew one of the executives at Blinding Edge Pictures, which is Knight's company. They used to work together. Hey, we should get these guys together. Okay, I hear that a lot. Nothing ever happens. In this case, it did. So in March of 2023, heard from my Hollywood guy. He's like, hey, you're going to meet with Knight. And I said, okay. There's a purpose for the meeting. So the plan for the meeting was for Knight and I to meet in May, 2 months later. And each of us had to come up with an original story that would work as a novel and a film that would satisfy his audience and mine fully. So I put my thinking cap on in North Carolina. He put his thinking cap on in Pennsylvania. We show up in May. We pitch each other our stories, 5 or 6 sentences. That's all you need. It's the outline of an idea, okay? We decide then and there, okay, let's do Knights, right? Okay, we can do that. I chose it because, hey, look, he wants to do a love story. I've done that before. This is easy. It's a layup for me, folks. I'll take a layup. Why work extra hard, right? So we do that. So in May of 2023, we start hammering out all the details of Remain. Who's the main character? Where's this setting? Why is he there? Who are the secondary characters? Oh, okay. Well, what happens? What's going to drive the story later? The mystery part. Oh, we need some other characters. Well, who are they? What's their relation? How do they fit in? Hammer all that out in May of 2023. Now, at that point, there was also a secondary purpose to the meeting, and that was to see whether we wanted to work together, right? I don't need him, and he doesn't need me. So do we want to work together? Is it going to be good? Or, frankly, is it going to be more stress than it's worth? Because not every collaboration, some are terrible, right? And neither one of us had time for that. Well, we got along very well, but we didn't know what we were going to do. Was I going to write a short story and he was just going to produce it? Was I going to write a novella and he was going to produce it? We didn't know. And okay, so walk away from that meeting. Nothing at all happens until August of 2024, last August, or a year ago, August. And he called me up and he said, the last 3 movies I've done, they've been kind of dark. I want something a little more pure and light. I think the story we talked about is going to be my next movie. By my next movie means he's going to write the script, he's going to direct it, he's going to produce it. And I said, okay, then I guess I'll have to write a novel. And so the way to think about this is it's not an adaptation. He didn't take my novel and adapt the screenplay, nor was it a novelization. I did not take the movie and write a novel out of it. You got to think of this as like identical twins that came from the same seed, right? Identical cell splits, and then they're raised by entirely different fathers. That's how you got to think of this. Same main characters, same secondary characters, pretty much the same setting, same kind of chain of events. Hey, I did my version of that story that we conceived, and he did his version of that story that we conceived. So are there differences? Of course. But there are differences in movies when compared to films. A novel's a story told with words, and a film is a story told with pictures. Some things work better in one than the other. So, I hacked through that. I started, I think, writing October 12th, finished January 29th, edited, and here I am on tour.
Yay! That is really fascinating. I don't think I've ever heard of a collaboration working quite like that. And I love it because, you have all of these people out there, well, you would know better than anyone, who will say, oh, the book was better. Oh, the film was better. And in this way, they're 2 completely different animals. And
same egg,
yeah,
different fathers.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, but so I have to know, is the cast of the movie, did they read an early version of the novel, or have they only read the screenplay? Okay.
This is a great story. So sometimes things just happen. Okay, so again, this is Knight's story, but he's not here. So imagine he's telling this story.
I'm here instead.
Yeah. So he finished the first draft, and hit the save button. Okay, no one's even seen it. He hasn't even read it a second time. He hasn't even reviewed it. But he can't because it's his daughter's birthday. So he's got to go to New York. So he hops in the car, starts heading to New York. It's about a 2-hour drive. Hour and a half into the drive, Jake Gyllenhaal calls. And he says, Knight, I'd really like to be in one of your movies. And so then they talk and they do this. And Knight says, where are you? I'm in New York. Well, I'm going to New York. Well, you want to meet for tea. So they decide to meet for tea the next day. So after they hang up, Knight calls his assistant and says, hey, that thing I just printed? Not even a title yet. That thing I just printed or saved? print it out, put it in an envelope, drive it to New York. So she does, shows up in the hotel, hands it to Knight. So Knight and Jake meet for tea. And you know what Jake talks about? It's like, he's seeing this woman, and she's the love of his life, and all they're talking about is love. And then he mentions, and I would like to do one of your movies. So Knight casually reaches into his briefcase and says, why don't you read this? Jake had no idea it was coming. He says he took it, and he's holding it, and he's in the elevator like this, holding the envelope over his chest like this. He calls Knight, 2 days later, says, I'm in. Well, we got Jake Gyllenhaal. And, I knew that story way back from October. And, of course, the hardest part for me was I couldn't tell anybody, but boy, did I feel like I was walking around with a secret in my pocket, It was pretty exciting. Okay, so then Phoebe, who plays Daphne, which, by the way, means nothing to me, but my house manager, who's a female named Jeannie, she loved Bridgerton. And when I said, yeah, Jake Gyllenhaal's in the movie, and Phoebe Dynevor, she's like, Phoebe? I guess Bridgerton fans love Daphne. I guess there's a character named Daphne. Anyway.
And the Duke.
So there were three main people up for the role of Wren, who's the main female character. And Phoebe was one of them, and she just, her demeanor and everything, she was Wren tonight. And of course, then the rest of the casting came together. And no, I'm not going to tell you who the other two were.
Well, I cannot wait to see that.
Oh, you're
because
right.
They
Yeah,
are, those are two really amazing. That's a very star-studded cast. And you got to be on the set some this summer, I hear.
Yeah, I was on the set a couple of times, but I generally don't stay on set a long time. There's a couple reasons for that. The number one reason is it is like horrifically boring. You guys have no idea the level of boredom you get. Okay, I will tell you what it is. Here's what a movie is. So you get there, and let's say they're going to start shooting at 10:30. So you want to be on time, right? You show up at 10. So you sit. And meanwhile, you see a guy setting up a camera here and doing this and doing this. A couple of people you don't recognize standing in. So then finally the actors come and it's 10:30. They each have 3 lines. So they have the camera and they're pointing it on Kristy here. And she says her line. I say mine, line. Okay. Then they do that 7 times. Then they break, and the actors go off, and then they spend the next 45 minutes moving the camera from here, because see, it was aiming at Kristin. Well, now we got to put it there to aim at me. So you're watching people move cameras. So then they come out, and here come the actors again, and they do the same 3 lines each. But now we have it on Jake, his face, you see. Okay, then break. See, you know why? Because we don't have the establishing scene. So they spend 45 minutes moving the camera here, see, so they could see me and Chris walk like this and approach each other 7 more times. And then they break. And then they're like, we need the scene from up high. Oh my, so they got to move the crane in. Now imagine, if you're the guys doing the camera and the lights, and man, you're busy and you're working. If you're me watching, you're like, you're on your phone, you're scrolling, you're playing backgammon, Royal Kingdom, whatever your game is. You're just, I could be watching anything, right? That is a movie. And you do that for like 9 hours to get like 4 scenes of 3 lines each from all these different angles. That's making a movie. Okay, so that's one reason why I don't go. Or spend a lot of time. The other reason is frankly, I'm a distraction. I make people nervous. I have no idea why. But I don't want to be a distraction. I want I want a good movie made. And so, okay, I'll come in, do nice, say the hellos and spend a few days, do all the media that I'm supposed to do when I'm there. But yeah, there you go. Isn't it fun getting the truth?
The truth is great. Okay, so you've obviously had a lot of movie adaptations before. So have you ever gone into a novel knowing it was going to be a movie before? And does that
a couple of
influence?
times. Not only Remain, but The Last Song. I knew Miley Cyrus. That story, again, it's kind of one of those kismet things. Miley had a two-movie deal at Disney right after Hannah Montana. She'd done one. They said, what do you want to do something like? She said, I love To Walk to Remember. And so Adam Shankman, who directed To Walk to Remember, called me, and ironically or strangely or coincidentally, whatever you want to say, I was in the midst of thinking of writing a story with the main protagonist as a teenage female. So I'm like, yeah, I'm thinking about it. I don't have the whole story yet. If I can figure it out, if it all comes together, I'll call you. Well, I did figure it out. I told Adam, and then he said, okay, you got to go meet Miley. So I went to LA, went to Miley's house, pitched her and her family the story like I'm telling a story, right? And I had it, and because I had the story, it was going to be my next novel no matter what. It was just whether I was going to do a movie with Miley. She loved the story, told Disney, I want to do this one. So I had to write the script, right? No one else knows the story. So not only did I have to write the script, I had to write the script before the novel because of Miley's, the film schedule they had. So I think they had to film over the summer. They filmed right around here over at Tybee Island. So I think they filmed in May and June, or June and July, something like that. The novel wasn't coming out till October or November. So I wrote the script knowing it was going to be Miley. In fact, Miley picked the main character name. She named it after her grandfather who passed away, Ronnie. So I called her Veronica, but she's short Ronnie in the novel, but that was Miley, and I knew she would do it, yeah.
That's really cool. So you wrote that character with her in mind.
Yeah,
then,
I pictured Miley the whole way through as I was writing.
So do you prefer novel writing or screenwriting, or are they just different animals?
Different animals. I think screenplays are easier. And I'm very good at them. But the difference is if you're a novelist, you're the king. It's your novel. Your editor can make suggestions. You don't have to make them, right? You're the king. It's your book. It's your name on the cover. You're the king. Not so with a screenplay. I mean, you got other producers and they want to be kings, and studio execs and assistants to the producers, and the director wants things, and depending on the actors, they want things. And, all of a sudden, you have your thing. I'll tell you, I sent Disney an A+ script, and through sheer dint of effort, at all the goofballness of Hollywood, they turned it into a B- script. I was like, oh, good job. Okay. It was ridiculous. But what do you do, right? I'm serious. I'm not kidding. It's because up-and-coming people, like let's say you're a young studio exec, and they're all ridiculously young. They're like 26 or 27. They're trying to make their mark, you see. So they got to get their thing into the movie. And here's the kind of notes you get with a group of 8 or 9 people all trying to prove they're the best. They say, hey, this is really important. One of them will say, this Sally character, she's great. We got to build her more up and give her more of a momentum in her story. And so you're taking your notes. Oh, okay. More Sally, more momentum. Okay, maybe think in these scenes. Okay. Then you talk to the next guy. He says, I hate Sally. Get rid of her. That character does nothing. It's unnecessary. We're going to tighten this script up. And you're like, got it. Get rid of Sally. So who wants to deal with that, right? And you have to, right? You're a screenwriter. You're also the lowest of the low in Hollywood. So, I mean, look, be a king, be a sacrificial pawn,
Novels it is.
Novel it is, right? Yeah, yeah. And then writing a novel pays more, so you got that too.
I love it. Okay, so I want to go back to Remain for just a second. Readers are going to find everything they love about a Nicholas Sparks novel. There's a love story, there's an amazing setting, a wonderful plot, all of the things that people love about your books. And, you're a pretty confident guy, so I'll probably know the answer to this question, but there is a supernatural element to this book, which is something that maybe you've touched on a tiny bit but haven't really delved into before. Were you nervous?
No. Was I nervous? No.
Okay.
No, I mean, the key thing, you want to be a good writer. There's a lot of rules. Read a lot, practice writing. You got to do those. You also got to be authentic. You got to be honest. And so you got to be honest about the scenes you're writing, whether it's, hey, I want this scene to feel romantic, or I want the reader to feel infatuation or feel curiosity, right? As long as you're authentic and which means you're making your characters authentic and honest in that moment, you're like, well, how does it feel when one is curious or uncertain? Whatever you're trying to do, right? It's exactly the same thing with fear. How does that feel? Is it a sound that you hear and it takes a moment to understand what it is, and then one hears it again, right? And that's a little bit cliched, right? Because we've all immediately picked, I saw that in a movie. So, okay, how do I do that slightly differently? And so, so it feels fresh and original. And it's essentially the same muscle, but for a different emotion. And, that's what I do. So creating fright was no more difficult than creating anger. I actually, if I had to write a book where I had, and in fact, I'm doing that now, and it's hard because I have a genuinely bad character who does bad things. But he's not, but it's challenging to write because I'm not that person. And I don't want to hop into that head. When I wrote Dreamland, okay, another spoiler, by the way. Come on, people. We got to keep up with the books here. I was trying, one of the characters has bipolar 1 as manifested by hallucination and delusion. And I wanted to make sure that was fairly accurate. So where you're trying to be authentic and honest, you have to hop into that head to make that character very uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable because it's not right thinking. But you have to be honest to create that within yourself so it can be honest on the page. Does that make sense? That too is far more difficult than fright, right? Because it's really uncomfortable, especially because it's so foreign. But look, every single one of us has been afraid at something. We've all jumped at a slamming door or something, startled at something we saw out of the corner of our eyes or something. Everyone. So I have experience with that compared to other things I've written, right? Writing Noah Calhoun at 80. I was 27 years old. I didn't have a lot of experience with that. A little bit more of a challenge.
Well, you did the fear really well. There were a couple of times I had to go read something else before I went to bed because I was like, oh God. So you really nailed that. I also thought something so interesting about this book that I feel like you explore really well is these parts of life that are a little bit inexplicable, like things that we as humans can't 100% explain about life and death and love and, maybe the lines that are kind of blurred between these things. And I wondered as I was reading, did your opinion about any of that change as you were writing this novel?
I don't know if my opinion changed. Again, I think a key thing, and when I say honesty or authenticity, this is the same advice that Stephen King gives in On Writing. It's the same exact thing Knight said. And there's just a lot of truth to that. So I think I was probably close to the same person I was at the beginning as I was at the end, whatever that means. I mean, if I was trying to make a spooky scene, and no, it's not so spooky, and Don't worry.
No,
and it's not,
I
and it's certainly not
oversold it.
gross
I'm a baby.
or graphic.
I'm a baby.
It's not gross or graphic. It's really well done, trust me. Just right. Just the right level of spookiness. It's not the Fear Factory walking through that. It's more like you go in a house in Halloween and there's spider webs and dance and a moving something, that kind of thing.
Okay, I love that. Yeah. Sorry, maybe I oversold that. I'm a baby, though. And you know how before bed everything's a little scarier?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. The nighttime is a little scarier.
And the movie will have its moments, trust me.
I am sure. It's going to be a great movie. I can't wait. Okay, so one of the things that you're really known for is your really kind of lush southern settings. And you and I live about 45 minutes apart in North Carolina. I actually, fun fact, just told Nicholas backstage, my house was in the choice.
Nice.
Which is really funny. Yes. But I wanted this book to be really fresh in my mind before we were having this conversation. So I was actually reading it just a few days ago, and I opened the book. I happened to be in Massachusetts, and the book opens in Cape Cod. And I was like, oh my goodness. So why was that the perfect setting for this novel?
That was something that Knight and I discussed at that very first meeting. We're thinking, hey, you might do something a little ghostly or whatever. It feels kind of New England-y to me, I know. I mean, when someone says, look, there's a ghost story in L.A., I'm like, really? L.A.? Has it even been around long enough for a ghost? Or maybe, but probably wouldn't be an interesting ghost, right? Maybe be a little vapid or something, right? We're going to get interesting ghosts up. 16th Salem and all that. Yeah, that area. I think that's why we both chose it. It just felt right. Sometimes it just feels right. So that's part one. And then part two, it was a collaboration, so I didn't necessarily mind moving away from North Carolina for this.
Well, it was a wonderful setting. I absolutely loved it. Okay, so what are you hoping that readers will take away from Remain?
Oh, gosh. Always the same thing. It's always the same thing. One of the things, and though I know that pride is a sin, but in those moments when I say to myself that this is a job well done, can we say it that way? I try my best with every novel to make it the best thing I've ever done. And, for those of you who say, hey, my favorite of yours is The Notebook, you're like, well, I guess that means you've been going downhill for 25 years, okay? Look, that doesn't mean I haven't, I swear, given everything I have to make it. I have great respect for the idea that you are willing to walk into a bookstore or a Walmart or wherever and spend the money that you've worked for, your family has worked for, on something I've created. I'm honored by it. I'm humbled by it. And I would I would quit writing, period, before what I offered wasn't the absolute best I can do. Remain is the absolute best I can do for this kind of a story. I edited every line 10 times. It is as good as I can do, okay? That's it. So what I want you to take away, man, I hope you like it. I really do. It's everything I have, folks. It's everything I had, okay? I promise. I've never gotten lazy. And of course, right, look, this is how I make my living. Hey, you like it? Tell someone, right? And then, but mainly, you know what I hope? I hope that 10 years from now, when you have this book and it's on your shelf or in a stack or you pass it in a bookstore or you see it in a neighbor's house, you're like, oh, I remember that. I like that. But I want you to think that 10 years from now, because I want my books to be that memorable to you. And I want you to remember also, yeah, I like that one. I like The Notebook too. Boy, were they different though. I want you to remember enough that it was different than my other work, because I do try to make them all as different as I possibly can.
I love that. That's a good goal. You do that very well, too. Okay, since you mentioned the notebook, I was telling you this backstage. I remember when I was first trying to get published, and you had submitted one of your query letter for the notebook, I think to Writer's Digest, to show aspiring writers how to write a query letter, and it was very instructive, so thank you for that. But I think there's kind of this tendency for people to look at you now, writers or just anyone with a big goal, and think, oh, well, he got this, or he had this, or there was some like magic secret keys to the kingdom that you had that they don't have. And reading your story is kind of extraordinary. So for people who might not have heard about your road to publication, can you talk a little bit about how your first novel came to be?
Yeah. Overnight success. Right? I don't know. Yeah, the total anticlimax. My journey to become a writer was an odd one. I loved reading as a kid, but writing never entered my mind. My main passion growing up was running. I loved track and field. I broke my high school records and county records and state records, and get a full scholarship and break college records, and all the still hold them after 40 years. True, by the way. Not that we're here to talk about that, but let's be honest, 40 years is a long time. A lot of runners trying to catch the old Nicholas Sparks on the track, but anyway. Writing again. Okay. Yeah. Okay, after my freshman year, I got injured, and I was injured during my freshman year. It was Achilles tendonitis, severe swelling, the whole bit. I go home. I go to the doctor, and I say, hey, how do I get how do I get better? He's like, it's really easy. You just can't run. This was what I loved more than anything in the world. And I was depressed, moping around the house. I was 19 years old. My mom, she said, look, don't just pout, do something. I'm like, what? What is there to do? Life is meaningless, right? One of these overwrought 18-year-old, 19-year-old responses. She's like, well, I don't know. Go write a book. I'm kind of going great. Okay. Right? I was reading a lot of Stephen King, so I grab a typewriter and box paper, and I write my first novel over a period of 6 weeks. And it's unpublished. It's a horror novel. I get back to college. Can't make a living being a writer, so I major in business finance. I graduate, don't know what I'm going to do with my life, so I write a second novel. At that time, I'd been reading a lot of Agatha Christie, so I wrote myself a murder mystery set in the 1920s. Again, it wasn't published. At 27, I do a variety of jobs. At 27, I have a midlife crisis, basically. What am I doing with my life, right? And I was selling pharmaceuticals then. And a couple things happened. Like I said, at that time, my second son was not a good sleeper at night, so he was awake a lot, and he was only a year old, right? So my Kathy, who I was married to at the time, she was going to bed at like 8 o'clock at night. And so the house was quiet, right? And so I had an opportunity. What do? Do I watch TV for 3 hours? Or do I chase a dream, right? And I realized I liked the idea of chasing a dream. Kind of the same reason I like running track and things. You chase a dream. And so that's it. And everyone here has that same choice, right? You get home in the evenings, look, you watch TV, you scroll, read the internet, or you chase a dream. My dream was, okay, let me see if I could try writing again, but this time I'll give it a real chance. And I conceived this story, largely inspired by Kathy's grandparents, who had this great love story. And a lot of the elements of their love story went into, the novel that eventually became The Notebook. And I wrote it primarily, I was giving myself, okay, I'll give myself 3 chances. If I never get published, I know I'm just not cut out for this. But then it's like, what are you going to write? Well, this was a story that I thought I could write. I just thought I could. And I hacked it out, and get an agent, and there I am.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, there's more to that, right? Yeah, but I don't know how much time we have. We might have questions. So, but yeah, I had to get an agent and then get a publisher. And and then I was offered a life-changing advance, and it was great. But yeah, it was fine. The advance for the Notebook, I was earning about $40,000 a year at the time, and my wife wasn't working, so it was me, 2 kids. So we're just very typical, right? They offered me $1 million for that book right up front. And it's a size, and I'm not embarrassed. It's on the Wikipedia page. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. No, you don't know what I earn now, but it's $1 million then, okay? But it's so interesting. It sounds like all the money in the world. It sounds like so much. But, right, this is where your math and business finance comes in. You're like, oh, okay, let's subtract the agency's commission. Okay, oh, you're down to $850,000. Oh, let's drop off about 50% overall in taxes. Okay, you're at $425,000. Still life-changing money. But if your kids are 1 and 3 years old and you owe $200,000 on your mortgage, okay, it's enough to pay off your mortgage. It's enough to put some away for the kids' college, get that college fund started. It's enough to put, hey, let's get a nice jump start on my retirement, right? But there's not much left of it. You still got to turn on the lights and eat for the next 50 years. So I got that, and I didn't even tell anyone at work. That was in October 1995. I didn't quit my job until 1997. And it was funny, right? Most of the doctors and nurses knew, but my boss didn't know. And I remember in October 1996, right, the book's about to come out. He's living in Charlotte. And there I am on the front page in Charlotte. He meets me, for the morning. He's like, hey, what's going on? And then I did that math, and he said, yeah, that makes sense. So the only time I was willing to give that up, because again, you have to eat for the next 50 years, right? Message in a Bottle was going well, and because the Notebook had been successful, the publishing house was willing to pay me for Message in a Bottle too, and there was some movie interest already. And only then was I willing to say, okay, I'll stop my job and think that, okay, fingers and toes crossed, maybe I can do it again. And I worked really hard on Message in a Bottle to make it very different than the Notebook, but still within the realm of a love story in North Carolina. And that was a story inspired by my dad after the death of my mom. So anyway, it's been one book ever since. Yeah, one at a time. One at a time.
Lucky us.
Yeah, thank you. Do we have questions?
Thank you, Nicholas, for having such a fun and engaging discussion with all of us and giving us the, behind-the-scenes scoop on your writing and filming. That was very entertaining. Your insights and reflections brought your work to life in such a meaningful way. And thank you, Kristy, for being in such great conversation with Nicholas. We appreciate both of you. We do now have time for a few questions. Please catch the eye or the attention of a volunteer who is carrying a mic. Please kindly keep your comments brief. Questions only, no stories, please. So we'll go ahead and start on the right side. This person in the white shirt.
The man.
If you please stand.
Shout it out, I'll repeat it. Just shout it.
In the age of AI, how do you think ChatGPT and other sources like that are going to change writing? I certainly value your creativity, but it's affecting Hollywood, it's affecting other creative areas. How do you think AI is going to affect the publishing world?
So the question for those who didn't hear it, how is AI going to affect the publishing world? Yeah, it's going to. Yeah. But it's interesting. I've thought about AI, right? Because, man, wouldn't that be great? Now my life would be golden. Press a button, whoa, print the checks. Boy, that'd be great. Boom. Man, you get 300 books a year, I'm telling you. But when I think about AI, and let's take someone like me, though, we could use anyone else, right? You could take the sum total of everything that everyone's ever written, and that's essentially taking nothing at all. Because what style is it? Is it Steinbeck's? Is it King's? Is it James Joyce? Which one is it? Is it Shakespeare? Right? If you put everything in there, which is what they're doing, what is it? Right? So basically, what you need is the next step, which is learning AI. And of course, that's what they mean by that. Oh, it's going to learn. Well, it only learns to the extent that the guy who's doing the AI and trying to figure this out, hey, I'm the guy who wants to write the book, how he puts it in. I value Mark Twain's writing higher than Steinbeck, higher than this. But okay, is that enough? I'll give you an example. Theoretically, I could take my novels and I could just, I want to write a book like Nicholas Sparks, right? I would have to start with the Notebook, right? And first, right, we get it in, and the AI thinks it figures things out. So here's the Notebook. In fact, take all my books. Okay, now write an opening paragraph for me. It won't work because there's not enough information. What am I talking about? It's literally, you almost have to do a sentence by sentence. This sentence is, in my opinion, 1/4 descriptive, 25% descriptive, and 75% setting a mood with a level of 4. Now I got to go to the next sentence. This is narrative. Short description because dialogue is fast and I'm in a fast part of the novel. It's an area that's supposed to move fast. Whereas this description is slower because I'm setting tone. And who's the only one that knows the answer to every one of those sentences? You guys can guess. Go ahead. You won't be right. Man, is AI ready for that? Because remember, it's only going to be as good as the inputs that go into it. Right? And even if it learns, it's only going to be that good. It's probably that level to be able to hit a... Now, look, you can hit a button and write a book. They're horrible. Go ahead. They're horrible. So a few years off, and maybe one day if I get bored, I'll say, okay, here's why. Because, one of the most difficult things I do in my novels are what I term as transitions. It's what I call them. You're like, well, what's a transition? Transitions are step-by-step changes. Like, for instance, if you want to have the process of falling in love. Look, you can have it go straight to man, they're in love. But realistically, if you want to be more realistic, maybe there's interest, and then maybe there's infatuation, maybe then there's hesitation, maybe then there's curiosity, and then maybe there's attraction, and then maybe there's the next step. Man, a lot of writers go from there to there, or they hit there, there, and there. I try to hit these transitions exactly right. Okay? AI would probably not pick that up because I have to literally label each of these transitions. And they're very difficult to do if you want to do them originally, efficiently, and hide it from all of you so none of you even notice it's happening. That's why the books genuinely move you emotionally. It's they sneak up on you. And it's because by the time the character announces something that he's actually feeling, I'm in love, I'm sad, I'm this, or you're already feeling it as a reader. That's why they're effective. Very difficult. So, great question. First time I've ever been asked that, but it's a good one. But I've thought about it.
We may have room for one more question. Let's
Sorry about the long answer, folks, but I thought it was an interesting topic, right?
Hello. Hi. In your books, I've read all of them, you pull from names and experiences that you've had in your life. Is Remain going to be the same thing?
Oh, yes. There are elements in there that come from me. Oh, what a great way to end this little shindig. Boy, 2 great questions. I love this. I, in honor of Remain, have a ghost story. Ooh. True, right? How fun, right? So when I was growing up, I dated a girl named Lisa Mills in high school, and her parents were Pat and Bill Mills. Now, Bill is also known as Billy Mills. He's an Ogallala Sioux Indian from the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. He was orphaned, eventually goes to college and goes to the Marine Corps. He wins the Olympic gold medal in the 10,000 meter run in Tokyo. He's the only American ever, even today, he won it in 1964, he's the only American ever to win the 10,000 meters. Came from nowhere. He was so unknown, he ran in borrowed shoes because the team wouldn't even give him shoes. Okay, out of nowhere wins. You can catch it on YouTube. They made a movie about him called Running Brave. Okay, so that's Lisa's parents. So of course, I date Lisa, I meet the parents. And guess what? He's a serious runner. Bill, right? Man, idolized that guy. So sadly, me and Lisa, we don't make it. I remember going to the parents' house. Yeah, I'm really sad about Lisa, but man, I don't want to lose you two. And they're like, oh, that's okay, we love you too. To the point that, I eventually get married. They pay for me and Kathy's honeymoon. They're the godparents of my first child. And get this, even when I have 5 children, and I would fly from North Carolina to Sacramento, California, where they live with 5 children and 2 nannies, we'd stay at Pat and Bill's house. Okay, yeah, Lisa calls me the ex-boyfriend that never went away. All right, they're wonderful, wonderful people. Yeah, we're getting there. I just had to set the stage. Okay, here it comes. Bill is very famous in the Indian world, or if you prefer, the Native American world, obviously, right? He's a genuine hero. So as he travels and gives speeches, he was a motivational speaker, he was given gifts by numerous tribes. Full Indian headdresses, eagle feather headdresses, illegal to own unless you're Bill, basically, and you're named a chief in your tribe. He gets all these tomahawks, you name it, his Olympic gold medal, amazing stuff. Well, he was given an eagle bone whistle. Yeah, whistle carved from an eagle bone that had been owned by black elk. You can Google black elk if you want, but I'll tell you what he was. He was a very mystical, powerful, mystical Sioux Indian from Pine Ridge in the early 1900s, kind of a shaman. So he gets this eagle bone whistle and he puts it into his, the library in his house, his cabinets, right, with his headdresses and his gold medal and all the cool Indian stuff. Well, it's in there. Me and Kathy and the 5 kids go out for our summer visit, and there we are at Bill's house. And I'm sitting there on the couch, and I'm just seeing movement out of the corner of my eye. And I look, and there's nothing there. Nothing that could be causing it. Flickering. Look again this side. Nothing there. Happens over and over. That night, my wife, Kathy at the time, wakes up. She hears tom-toms, Indian tom-toms. It's like, who the hell's playing the drums? So she walks from this end of the house And by the time she gets here, it's coming from where she came from. And she goes back here, and now it's coming from there. We talk about this in the morning. We say, Pat, Bill, you know, your house might be haunted. And they're like, oh, you mean George? I'm like, okay, explain. The whole bit. Flickering lights they're telling me about, slamming doors, and then this is what happened. So it's the middle of summer in Sacramento. It's very dry in California. It's a desert, right? It doesn't rain much. And all of a sudden, cloud rolls in, a lightning bolt shoots from the sky, true story, hits an oak tree in their yard, splits the oak tree in half. Half hour later, Lisa comes over to their house, and she says, Mark and I are getting divorced. That was the tree where they'd taken all of their wedding photos.
Wow.
So Bill says, okay, this eagle bone whistle does not want to be here. So he's got a speech at Pine Ridge, and so he flies it back, finds a descendant of black elk, right? A distant great-great-great-grandchild or whatever. He says, hey, this does not want to be here. He gives it back. He flies home at the end of his speech. Bill is not prone to exaggeration. He doesn't have to. He's just one of the greatest, most honest people you ever meet. He says he walked in the door, pushes the door open. He feels this big whoosh of, thank you. Since then, no flickering lights, no slamming doors, weird lightning bolts, fluttering in the corner of the eyes, or tom-toms. Now, as you read Remain, you'll perhaps notice that one of the characters, perhaps, might have some flickering in the corner of his eyes that he can't explain.
Oh, we missed our opportunity, y'all. We could have had lights flickering in here this whole time. Thank you so much. That concludes our Q&A for the evening. Let's give one more heartfelt round of applause.
I wouldn't want to say one more thing. All right. Now, what we're going to do is do pictures, and they take time. Now, they're probably going to do it by rows. Really, don't rush up, because all it's going to do is make you hot, and you have to stand there. This will go fast. The last one will probably be out of here in an hour and 15 minutes. It won't take long. So sit in the air-conditioned thing until your row is called. Way better. It's just way better. You're more comfortable. You can talk. You know, you're not crowded. You're not standing, hurting your back. Look, I'm not worth any of that. Just be comfortable in the air conditioning. Read the book for a little bit, right? This is an idea. All right, hey, just my 2 cents. Now go ahead.
No, thank you all so much. Thank you, Nicholas. Thank you, Kristy, Woodson, Harvey, for an unforgettable evening.
Thank you for tuning in. You can join us every week on Facebook or YouTube, where our live show airs on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Also, subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Instagram. We're so glad you're here.